Oh,
Recording in progress.
sorry. I did it to the wrong place.
Recording stopped.
There we go.
Recording in progress.
Right. Thanks, Josh.
Those just joining us, I'd like to welcome you to the Blue Room Committee on Sustainable Practices meeting of July 28th. So I'm going to start by calling the meeting to order. Next is acceptance of minutes from the June 23rd meeting. Is there a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion.
Motion made.
Second.
Are there any proposed amendments needed? All right, and what I recently learned is you actually don't have to vote on minutes if there's no amendments. Yeah, this was new to me. As far as new business goes, we spent a lot of time on the climate action plan. Do you feel comfortable bringing everyone else up to speed on the climate action
I
plan?
would look to Peter.
All right.
For that. Sorry, Peter.
That's all right. That's fine. As long as I don't have to tell more about. I did have the living
guy
system
theory.
part, but I'm the guy in theory. But I couldn't go much further than that. I thought it was like Mother Earth and living system. So
That's you got the language,
all right,
Mother Earth and living systems, right?
that's what I remember. That's all I remember. So the climate action plan update is that we have a draft that is complete, other than a few edits. We've run it by the city manager and the planning director, and we're going to get it circulated. It has to go through the city, get some budget numbers, get sign-offs from different departments, put the finances together. It's going to go out probably the end of next week, I imagine, will be the time frame. We haven't really decided how many weeks to give the consultant, but we were initially thinking 3 or 4. We don't want to wait too long because we'll have to wait for those to come back. Then we have to review it. Then we might have to interviews. So it's going to add to the time frame. We want to get going as fast as possible, but we also don't want to rush it. So, but I'm thinking we'll probably do 4 weeks. It seems like a reasonable time. I don't know. You do a lot of contracts. That's not unusual, right? I think it's pretty typical to
I
get
think that's
people.
pretty typical.
3 weeks feels a little rushed for people.
As long as that first push is a push.
Yeah.
I think 4 weeks. I mean, most of them are gonna have they're gonna have templates to work off of for this type of thing. So it's not
Yeah.
like it should take them 4 weeks to put a proposal together.
No.
I think that's standard.
Just gotta give them some time to find it. We might, if we get held up in getting it out, we might go 3 weeks, but right now the plan is 4 weeks, so it'll be 5 weeks from now. We'll get it on the street, and then it'll probably take another month or so between reviewing it and interviews and all that to get it going. So that's where we are. In terms of content, the committee has talked about that a lot. I don't know if there's questions, I can answer them, but I won't go into too much detail on that. But the big concepts are, huge public involvement based largely, a lot of it anyway, at least what we're going to do from the city standpoint, and volunteers might do different things. But in terms of the city, what we thought we would do is get city staff trained. We talked to city staff the other day. We're going to have an all-staff meeting and do like an eco-municipality approach to the training, and then talk through the eco-municipality lens of what climate action planning and work will look like. It's a little easier at the city level. Then at the citywide level, we thought we'd go with the same approach. We can talk more about how that looks, but getting people up to speed through what an eco-municipality is and then empowering people to make decisions through that lens seems like a good approach to go with. And so we're working on presentations, and maybe the thought is that we would train presenters. We have a lot of volunteers that are interested, train presenters so that they can go to their community groups or friends or however they want to do it and give presentations to them. Maybe they get people to come here and get more trainings. That's the thought. Those are sort of the big picture thoughts in terms of the outreach. And then from there, we'll see what actions we can get put in place. We are going to hold back. We told the amount in the RFP is $80,000, not $100,000. And the thought on that is that we want to finish the climate action plan and go right into some actions or bump up the outreach, depending on what we feel like we need at that point. But the thought is that if we stop when we finish the climate action plan, we spend our $80,000, there's nothing in the budget left, then we can't do things. If people, hopefully we get a good response from consultants and they can do it for $80,000. We found that Portsmouth is a pretty desirable place to work. They can sell that to a lot of other communities if they did a climate action plan here. So they usually work a little harder to come here, which is a good thing about our community. So I think it'll be all right to do 80,000, and we have a lot of work prepared already. So I think it's doable for 80,000. So That's my brief summary.
And I think that's a good segue mentioning the engagement, because the prior sustainability committee meeting, we had talked about forming a climate action plan engagement subcommittee. Would anyone here be interested in joining such a subcommittee?
Yeah, and I think a number of people that worked on the Climate Action Plan RFP committee with Peter were thinking of moving into that.
Would anyone like to join that subcommittee? Is there, how often were you meeting? Was it
I'm sorry?
how
We're
often?
meeting weekly,
Weekly, you're
Mhm.
meeting. So if you're wondering what a commitment
which
would
was
be
a
like.
little aggressive.
Yeah,
like
I think that-
That was because
I'd be
to
different.
get the RFP out with
Right.
community engagement, maybe there'll be a different
Okay.
cadence.
Yeah.
I know the greenhouse gas, we're meeting every other week for that
Alright.
inventory. And even that feels,
Like a lot.
Yeah. that was less aggressive. So I feel like that cadence are similar.
I'd be happy to join the subcommittee. Herb Lloyd, and sign me up. Get my feet wet. This is my second meeting.
You can do that too, Josh.
All right, Herb and Aubrey. And as far as the city council presentation went, John Carter's not here, but he did an excellent job. It was a long city council meeting, so the fact that he was one of the first presenters to go, I think worked really well. And we hit all of the highlights. I don't know if there's any, I don't want to emphasize anything that he missed, but I can't think of a single thing that he missed. And Kate, you were sitting up there with me. Any thoughts on the CAP presentation, which was given by the subcommittee?
I think it was actually really well received. People seem to be really taking in the information and really were attuned to the attachments. So I got the sense that the council really felt that it was a needed update and that they appreciated the information.
Thank you. Any other comments on that? And I'm guilty of when I chair meetings to just plow right through the agenda. So at any point, please jump in. So next is Portsmouth Climate Solutions. So Brian, I'm gonna turn that over to you.
Portsmouth Climate Solutions has been meeting. We're in our 42nd continuous meeting, starting with the drawdown seminars or classes that we had. And we are looking at a couple of things, and we're going to get to the main one that is tonight with transportation. But Effie, would you like to just fill people in on public engagement that's already going on, which is pretty exciting?
Great, so it's great. Jess and I, and you'd be welcome as well, are often at the Portsmouth Climate Solutions meeting on Wednesday nights, Zoom. And we've lately been talking about an interactive community platform that would dovetail with the climate action plan. But the advantageous thing about the interactive community platforms is we could start next month if we signed a contract with one of these software companies. And there's a couple we're looking at. One is out of California called Bright Action. And we have sites set up, so if you want to try it out and see the kind of things we're talking about, get in touch and we'll give the links. Or were they in the minutes earlier maybe? I'm not sure.
Fred was going to put them in the minutes, the three of them in the minutes, and anybody it meets every Wednesday night for 1 hour from, on Wednesday evening from 7 to 8. We keep it tight, and there's usually minutes if you miss, so you could catch up. And if you want to get on the list, CF or Jess.
Yeah.
Jess is good. Either one. They're
The other product we're looking at is called Mass Energize, and we found it because we've been doing a lot of work with Concord Mass and their climate action plan. And I noticed an affiliated organization there called Cooler Concord, when I went to their website, at the very bottom in small print, it said powered by Mass Energize, and I thought, what's that? They're a nonprofit, and they just do these sites for communities with climate action plans. So I talked to one of their leaders, and they're eager to work with us and eager to work potentially with UNH Sustainability Institute. For most of their sites right now are all in Massachusetts, so this would be breaking new territory for them to come to Portsmouth and work with UNH. Another site I found out from Christina Dubin is called GRITS, and I'm not as clear about that site. I think it's more of a dashboard than an interactive community platform, but it's not all universities and colleges. They do have some towns using GRITS. I forget which ones, maybe Andover and Worcester and a few others. So we're gonna be looking at all those. One thing I wanted to bring up before we move to transportation is to say that we'd love to have some students from the Eco Club test the platforms and give us feedback. We're trying to generate questions for the different vendors because we'd like to go ahead and sign up for one of these platforms.
Is that the type of thing that would come out of the 20,000 reserve that Peter was talking about?
It's interesting. I think it was Ann Bliss originally who knew of, or Bert, you told us originally, the drawdown money that the Rotary International is giving grants out. And we feel like we'd have a good shot at that money, and it's not a lot of money we're talking about. There's a startup fee, and then a maintenance fee. Maybe they're different price levels depending on what model you go for, good, better, best maybe, but maybe between $2,000 and $5,000.
So the thought is this would be independent of a city website.
Right.
At least for now, anyways, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did notice a lot of the cities I looked at have a city dashboard and this community
I
website
think
that's
it's-
kind of
It's a
friendlier.
good model. I mean, it's just unusual, but in a good way. I mean, to have that community strength doing something that they stand up on their own, it kind of shows a lot for the community.
And we obviously would come back and discuss it with this group before we would let a contract on it. But maybe we could demonstrate it here.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. And
Sure.
we have, in the RFP, we have called out some kind of dashboard or community component. And we just have to think about how that works, whether we need it or don't need it, depending on how this goes. And
Yeah. If we use Concord, Mass. as an example, the city website, when you go to their 5 sectors, their 5 topics like energy, mobility, whatever, when you click on it, it says what you can do, and that takes you to community actions. And
So
it's
it's
similar
linked.
to the interactive dashboard, but it just lists them. If you go to the interactive community products that we're looking at, it would say, these are the things you can do. This is minimal effort. This will take a lot of thought and effort and planning. This is easy. This is expensive. Here's a testimonial from your neighbor who already installed heat pumps and how they did. So it's just more interactive.
I'd like to just comment for the Eco Club. One of the things that I think Portsmouth Climate Solutions and investigating this is, and it goes for in general, we want things that are effective. And Effie, I think we should just say, so what are some of the plus and minuses? And do you want to share what you got from one of the city managers in regard to how effective or who they got as a population? Or should I do what I remember?
If you know that,
I
that's
can do
great.
that.
Or
Yeah.
Jess, were you the one who called?
Okay, I'm
So-
not sure about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the reason you shouldn't be sure because my memory is wrong. It was Jess. So Jess, that was very interesting to me.
So when we were doing the work on looking into other climate action plans, I spoke with a woman from Milwaukee, Oregon. They are just south of Portland, a little similar to us because they are on the river, about the same population size. And one of the things she said, they had their own interactive dashboard created as part of their community action plan and their public outreach plan. And when I asked her about that, she said that the engagement was kind of there was a lot of initial engagement, then it kind of petered off, and that the people who tended to be engaged with it were the people who were already motivated and trying to take action and do things. And then, some of the people who were less aware or less involved tended not to engage so much. So those are actually my questions, is how do we keep people engaged, and how do we really create it so it's more universal and equitable for everybody to get more people involved and committed? Because some of the initial things that we noticed about them are sometimes they can be skewed more towards homeowners. So if you're a renter or anything, you might not find it so user-friendly because a lot of it might not apply to you. So those are some of my questions about for them moving forward. But that was the feedback that I initially got.
And that was interesting to me, and I bring it up here because, Ben, if you had friends or family or 5 or 10 things, I think to test it on a population, the real bottom line, is it worth putting energy, money, and time into if it doesn't change behavior or engage people, if it just looks good? And so if you even had 5 people and get their feedback, what do they think other students are? That's the kind of thing, if you were interested.
I'd be happy to try.
Good, okay, I'll send you the list.
Yes, please do.
I'd be interested too if there's this is 2 parts. One is if there's a data side to it. I know for the greenhouse gas inventory, right now we're working on municipality level because that's information that we can easily get. But as that expands to the community level, things get a little grayer and there's a lot more assumptions. A lot of those assumptions are based on pretty large populations because we simply don't have the information for our city. So, you're crowdsourcing this. Is there, even if it's as, baseline as this many people on the app are using heating oil, and this many people have installed heat pumps, at least that allows us to look at our numbers and have some type of comparison. Okay, are we in the right ballpark? I think that would be really useful. On the other side of that, information collection on apps is something that I think deters a lot of people, and so asking them what those kind of privacy, is there a privacy setting? You don't want to be a neighbor whose neighbor knows how much you spent on the heat pumps or whatever, but you're okay with that information just for a, for as an aggregate data collection.
Right.
Is that something that
They're
platforms-
aware of.
Yeah. Have built
Your
in.
first question is a question that's been brought up by someone in the Portsmouth Climate Solutions already. Are you keeping data? Is there a way that you can see the use of your dashboard shifting greenhouse gas emissions and totals and those things? So
That's great.
that is.
And I think aside from the tracking, I think from what I've seen, I think it's a useful tool for educating people because, everybody seems like they're against climate change, or maybe not everybody, but let's say a lot of people in Portsmouth. But they don't know what to do, so they come to me and say, what should I do? So there's, a list of things on this website, whether it's transportation or energy or your home and weatherization and a lot of areas where people can do things. And then they see, oh, you want me to change my lifestyle, you want me to do this or that. And they might be resistant, but then seeing neighbors do it, I think it's one way to help build a movement, just one piece.
Are any or all of the 3, just out of curiosity, using gamification on the app to make it interesting and engaging and whatever, you get little
They use that
points
word
for
actually,
different
yeah.
Gamification.
You get
That improves
tokens
the
and-
engagement.
You can get trees or free ice cream cones.
That would work.
Very cool. Any other comments from the Portsmouth Climate Solutions meetings this past month?
But that was that's just the dashboard. Now we go over to transportation and just to contextualize.
I want to cover your screen. so we can show both. You want to show these slides, right, Bill?
Yes, so thank you, Peter.
Now, the thing that we always talking about how rich and valuable our community is in terms of having folks who have experience. And so Bill is somebody who is in a position now where he's able to take what he would do on a bigger scale, and because he's been here in Portsmouth, his wealth of knowledge, he's looking for a place to best intersect with our system, our committee, other committee, and maybe even a small group of how to get transportation, talk about community engagement, and the climate action plan. How do we get things going? And so Bill has put some good energy into the slides, and go for it, Bill, and then we'll have some questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Bert. And Peter, if you could do the next slide.
Okay, I'm at the limit of my technology here, but I think I can do it.
I did a few hard copies that will be totally unreadable, especially in the dark, but just in case you wanted to
I think I'll
take
get it. I think I'll get it. Just
anything
bear with me here.
away.
Let's see if this works. There we go.
Okay.
Good old-fashioned arrow.
As Bert mentioned, I'm a longtime
Kate?
Portsmouth resident,
Sorry.
40
Kate,
years.
Okay, sorry, Bill.
40 years Portsmouth resident and 40 years working for the think tank for the U.S. Department of Transportation in Cambridge. And with an ashamedly high carbon footprint, both from my commute and the fact that the last 7 years of my career I've been working on economic development in fragile countries. And a lot of this over the years has involved the intersection of transportation and climate change. Year after year, working with regional planning organizations or metropolitan planning organizations. The Seacoast Metropolitan Planning Organization is the one that serves this area, both on the regulatory side and on the best practices research side. So it's transportation and fill in the blank on innovation. And that's a very serious look at best practices for considering climate change. In that, and the last 7 years working on economic development for the government, federal government, in places like Nepal and Sri Lanka and Malawi and Mozambique, and places I couldn't really find on the map before I started working there. But combined with that, probably over the last 15 years being involved in every transportation sustainability activity that I heard of and could find the time to work on. So lots of activity with Portsmouth Smart Growth, the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Transport Policy Committee, the Bike Ped Citizens Committee for the Bike Ped Plan, Transport Panel for McIntyre. So lots and lots of different things. So I know the lay of the land on the Portsmouth City, particularly on sustainability activities. Over the last 3 weeks, I've been working with the Climate Solutions Group. Probably 4 or 5 people sitting around the table have helped shape this idea for a possible activity that would be a particular focus, planning and action-oriented focus, sort of an early start or an energized activity wherever it's useful in the timeline that would focus on transportation. The goals are pretty straightforward: improve community understanding of transport strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, help frame the approach to transport, collaborate on shared ideas to start generating some ideas on promising activities, early input to the RFP, which sounds like it's really pretty well done, but generating ideas for the community action, climate action plan. And as Peter mentioned, the community engagement is going to be a key part going into it, and developing it and certainly coming out of it. So I guess the question that we would love to get some feedback on is how could this be a transportation overlay that might be a model for other sectors as well. We talked about developing something that could be replicated with other sectors. Next slide, please. The idea, of course, is to apply the three pillars of sustainability, and these really could be criteria for screening possible strategies. And you see some of the possible strategies, and I would guess that probably every plan or almost all plans have these sorts of strategies for transport in a CAP. There's just basic things, mode shifts from single occupant vehicles to ride sharing and to public transit, really tapping into all the new mobility types of activities that are underway with apps and digitalization, the sorts of things you can see now on Google Maps, but much more sophisticated. I think in Portsmouth, probably our biggest failure is we don't have a lot of options to show. I mean, what there is, you can see Uber, you can see the Lyft, maybe bike sharing, you can see Coast, but I don't think it's getting a lot of action. So I think one of the problems is how do you put these sorts of strategies together in a way that will really move the needle on greenhouse gas emissions. So one major category is that. The other major category is electric vehicles and alternative fuels. And my guess is probably in the FE and Jessen, the long database of examples for the transport component, which according to the EPA nationally is the largest sector for greenhouse gas emissions at 27%. My guess it's probably higher than that for Portsmouth. That would be a good leading question, and maybe folks already know the answer to that. Considering co-benefits, particularly linkages between transportation, land use, and housing, particularly affordable housing, if there's a way to connect those new forms of mobility, public transit, bike, and pedestrian, to new affordable housing projects, tying it into energy and the much more open one, quality of life and livability. So we may be talking about a focus on emissions reduction while recognizing the other side of the coin, of course, the adaptation resilience. So this is a kind of a suggested focus for an activity. And next and last slide, just ideas for next steps. And of course, all this is a proposal, and I think we're very much interested in seeing what the feedback is and level of interest to make sure that whatever would come out of this is practical and feasible and fits within the timeline to be really useful in terms of what the city is developing with the CAP and the progress on the RFP. So these are all steps. The amount of time that could go into this really depends on the amount of time people have to put into it, and again, the timeline to be useful. I think one of the key questions is how to make sure this complements the other activities that are going on. Certainly the public engagement, this could be input to that as well. So hoping to get some suggestions, possibly expression of whether this possible project seems promising and interesting, refined it with Climate Solutions. This is the chance to get some feedback from this committee. After that, then obvious next steps are key Portsmouth city staff, Peter, and probably the Portsmouth planning director and any other staff that are interested just in doing some brainstorming around what would be useful, and identifying participants for another small informal work group, people that would like to roll up their sleeves and start thinking about transportation and climate change and promising actions for emissions reduction. Once ideas start to take a bit of shape, getting some input and maybe interest from key stakeholders, looking at possible strategies that would be Coast and Sabre, the Rockingham Planning Commission, Seacoast Metropolitan Planning Organization, really as a start, maybe a few of the neighboring towns that have an interest. One of the main questions is how do you frame transport? Is it just trips that are within the city limits? That's not so much. Is it trips coming in and out? What about the port? What about the airport? Those are all issues that have been wrestled with in the peer caps that folks have looked at. So it would be very interesting to see how they define that. It would be really whatever makes sense for Portsmouth, because you want to have a plan that reduces emissions, and how do you want to really cast the net on that? Very important to be thinking about the transport baseline emissions coming out of what you've talked about Tori, relevant platforms, data and metrics, and best practice caps. So I guess the key is what's a realistic level of effort to make this useful and complementary. So that's a once over lightly, and I think whatever comes out of this, if something does, it needs to be helpful. So appreciate any thoughts and feedback, or anybody who is a transport wonk and is just dying to join me on this. You're very welcome.
I have a quick thought, and that's that I would love for you to come to some of the greenhouse gas inventory meetings, because a lot of these conversations we're having and
Sure.
your expertise would be much, much appreciated.
Of course.
We've already, I know in the CAP subcommittee and now in the greenhouse gas inventory as we move forward to community, especially looking at the trade port, looking at our port and looking at the highway impact and where we bring those things in, if they've been brought in past inventories, and continue is very much a conversation that is happening.
Sure.
and I think the numbers again is only going to help. The
It's pure behavioral. I mean, as much as you look at this and say, well, there aren't a lot of bike riders. I'm a bike rider. There aren't a lot of public transit users. It almost looks like it's low-hanging fruit, really, for moving the emissions needle. But then you get into really hardcore issues of behavior.
Behavior and when you hear Coast talk, I've heard them speak recently at the Rockingham Planning Commission, and they have to cancel bus routes because they can't get drivers on the buses, and a lot of the buses are empty when they drive them. It's tough to get the ridership, and it's tough to get the drivers. So it is a challenge. But are there other ways? I was just thinking, are there other ways to get people from point A to point B that don't involve a big bus? And I don't know what that is. Obviously, rideshare is one, but is it too small?
I just visited Savannah and Charleston. Those are bigger cities.
Yep.
But they have wonderful loop buses that just go from downtown to the major destinations every 30 minutes. I think they're supported in part by local business, and tourists come and ride those. When we went there to both cities, we didn't have a car, and we used those. It seems like that's the sort of thing rather than the more traditional coast fixed route buses. It's really there are a lot of new things that are happening that I think Coast is probably pretty well informed about, but it's not doing the same old thing, but thinking about new things.
Yeah, looking at that transportation in the greenhouse gas inventory, it is a huge huge piece. And the way we looked at it before was right through the Rockingham Planning Commission model and vehicle miles traveled. But I've heard they've used apps like Waze and other apps to try to calculate those numbers, and a little different approach.
Well, it seems like if the RFP is $80,000, anything that you can do ahead, just it's all like taking a spade to the ground and breaking it up, so you can hand off to the contractor some early thinking that they can tee off on for public engagement or pick up on data collection. Helps them move ahead faster and maybe do less because there's some ideas on the table to start with rather than less of a blank page.
I just wanted to point out the work that Josh has done with and Kate for the EV zoning, and we have the EV show coming up,
Yes.
the 3rd annual. What's the date on that, Josh?
I guess I'll just jump into this now. It makes sense. The National Drive Electrics campaign across the country in 2018, Portsmouth held our first electric vehicle show. It was down in the lower parking lot of City Hall because we had unveiled our EV chargers there. Senator David Waters from Dover came and spoke at it. It was a relatively small event. It was kind of piecemeal and put together. The following year, I organized one for the Bridge Street lot. More people showed up. It was still kind of piecemeal. And then the reason why I picked that lot is I was still pushing to get I was successfully able to get a DC fast charger in at least the capital improvement plan for that parking lot. I want to highlight that. The 2 years I was off the council, there was no electric vehicle show. I wanted to bring it back, but this time we'll actually have organizational support. Josh Singer from New Hampshire Clean. I am horrible with names of
Clean
organizations.
Energy, New
Thank you.
Hampshire.
Yeah, Clean Energy New Hampshire. I spoke to him earlier in the week. He's agreed to be one of the organizers for it. So he'll actually be able to reach out to all of the auto dealerships in the area. He also has a network of volunteers. The previous two shows, Jessica Wilcox from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services was there. She had a table set up, which should be more robust and more organized this year. The time frame for National Drive Electric Week is from the last weekend in September to the first weekend in October. And the date which I proposed, so the city council approved sending the event to the city manager with authority to act, meaning she's going to work with the group organizers to figure out what works best. I pitched that last Sunday, which I believe is October 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. So you're looking at a calendar right now?
Second.
Second. So I propose that day, again at the Bridge Street lot, in the morning, general time frame from 10 to 1. The logic for that is the other weekends are best. The other weekends, I know Exeter is having one, I think that's Saturday around the same time frame. And from a city's perspective, I think their preference, if a parking lot were to be used, it would be during a non-peak time, and the least amount of vehicles there would be, and least amount of parking impacted would be on a Sunday morning. But on Sunday mornings, it can't be too early because people don't want to wake up super early to go to that show. So that's the proposal. That's out there right now. I'll be coordinating with the city manager's office. If there's anyone who's interested when it becomes more solidified in volunteering, whether it's just showing up with your electric vehicle and showing off, hey, here's a Goldwing EV, that's what this started as, or helping out in any other way, that would be greatly appreciated. So hopefully this time next month I'll have more information on, I guess it's not technically an annual if it didn't happen for 2 years, but Portsmouth's third electric vehicle show.
I'm curious if there's anybody in that circle that might know people that have done like electric car retrofits. Just so there's like interesting kind of funky vehicles there, not just like Teslas and a Leaf and BMW one and whatever, just to make it, generate some more interest in.
And
that's what I
is
want.
that as cool as it sounds, where you take a
I have a
gasoline
very
car,
good
you
friend
retrofit
that
it?
took a 1973 Volkswagen thing and made it all electric, and it's the coolest thing.
That's what I want. I want a big old Mercedes electric.
How
Really,
about a
really old.
Sprinter?
Yeah.
The does he live in the area?
No, he's in California.
Still, can you ask if he knows people in? Yeah, I don't know if there's a secret network.
It's gotta be a blog or a
ask.
chat room.
He might have a network.
Yeah, if there
I'll
is,
ask
you could look at it. That would
It's gotta
be
a
really
secret
cool.
society.
There's gotta be.
And what I left out is the reason why I want to do it at the Bridge Street lot now is although the DC fast charger for that lot was scrapped, what we were able to do instead of me putting it back in was include $150,000 a year for 6 years to have a proven plan for just electric vehicle charging. So a combination of DC fast chargers where they make sense, like maybe at the library, or just electric vehicle level 2 chargers. And they laid the groundwork for that when they redid the Bridge Street lot. So the wiring's already in. That's the, I guess, best practice is whenever you pave a lot and there's an electric source nearby, do the wiring now. So when the next fiscal year begins next summer, it should be pretty simple and a no-brainer for the city. Like, hey, let's put some of this money here for electric vehicle chargers first and go from there. So that's part of the reason why I want to do the Bridge Street lot again, is just to highlight, hey, this is coming, and go from there. But that's a better idea. Getting really cool
Both
vehicles.
complimentary.
Do you include other electric vehicles like scooters and bikes and stuff? Is this part of the?
I don't see why not.
Because I know, yeah, I know Port City Mopeds, he's selling tons of Segway scooters these days. He's shifting a lot of his stuff to electric.
Interesting.
Electric scooters are all the rage.
There's an electric bike store in Portsmouth.
Oh, that, I see those. Yeah.
That's right.
I think the trend in a lot of cities is away from bike sharing. You see a lot fewer of those, like in DC, and a lot more shared electric scooters.
Electric scooters, yeah, and electric scooters that are like little bikes almost, that are
Yeah.
mini bikes,
Yeah.
foldable, yeah.
Just to put a plug in with Peter in the room, I am. When the planning department pitched their budget, I put the new planning director on the spot to see what her thoughts were for bringing back a rideshare program like Zagster. Not necessarily Zagster, but I would love to see
Car sharing.
something come back
Yeah.
for bicycles, electric bicycles, something.
Well, it left because of the company went out of business.
Yeah.
But I don't know where the council support was on it at the time either, but it would be great. People love that. I hear, a lot of
I would
people-
see them
something
riding
like
along
it, yeah.
1A and ride to the beach. I'm like, that's great. There's
Well, and
Nice.
there's a model for regional ones as well. Northampton and Amherst, I believe.
I think the key, and it's Bert's favorite word, multimodal, which is connectivity. So you come up with combinations that are attractive enough for people to do without one car. If they've got two, to do without one, or two, if they have one, to do without any, because there are enough attractive alternatives, and it's the combination of all those, and that's why the new technology and the apps that will show you how to do those things. But then you need the options there, and I think the real weakness is to approach it in a piecemeal fashion.
And I think electric vehicle, the term vehicle could include scooters and bicycles and everything else. So
Electric scooters are fun.
yeah, so I could reach out to those businesses and see if they want to showcase them. So that's a great idea. I still like his idea best.
Yeah,
That's super cooler. But so I totally hijacked that portion of the conversation.
You got off the hook for an expression of interest or disinterest in the transportation dig-in.
Where I was looking at it, what I love about sustainability is that things are nested inside each other and go to scale. So here's where everybody gets excited about, oh, I'm going to get my electric bike. And what I think Bill's situation is a structure that helps get these activities on the ground. And I think I heard Bill saying, and I've used it since then, Bill, I think 90% of getting that on the ground is all the conversation and structure that allows it to get there. So I was thinking, Bill, it's so difficult to get the people communicating. I was thinking tonight, have you gotten some new information? Do you need anything more from us? And where is that?
I would say an expression of interest. I mean, this is really intended to be a low-key, informal thing that's really driven by the level of interest. It isn't dependent on me coming back with a bunch of ideas, but hopefully getting 3, 4, 5 people who would be interested just over whatever timeline is useful. And that's why a follow-up conversation with Peter particularly and the planning director, just to get a sense of where the connection is that's useful for something like this. And I think what's key is that we're talking about a plan. The plan will have a time duration. I don't know what that is, or is that flexible? Is it 10 years, 15 years?
Talking about the climate action plan?
Yeah.
No, 1 year.
1 year?
To
Really?
get the plan written.
Oh, to get it written.
Yeah,
but-
the work within it will be,
Yeah,
many.
but there's a difference between a planning activity and a hit the ground activity, build a bike lane or get a new
Right.
bike route,
Right.
new bus route. I mean, those are all part of it, but it's the scale that's important. If it's really going to be moving the needle on emissions, and if Portsmouth has a baseline greenhouse gas and wants to hit a target in 5 years or 10 years, that's a planning activity, and it's fine to be thinking about specific strategies and activities. But that's a kind of a planning activity, and that's the
That's
perspective
what I'm talking,
I
is
would
that
take.
the 90% that
Yeah.
it's the planning to get to the, and get the right activities.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to start doing something and get so involved with it, but it's not really moving the needle. That's why I think I'm interested in just looking at it at all levels. And I don't want to be climbing a ladder and find out I'm on the wrong building. And I think that that's why planning and committees and reflection and what we're doing around the climate action plan, we're creating the path as we go along. And I think that even to know that we're doing resilience as well as gas, which ones are doing which, and if we don't do this one, and we have to have it sequenced the first 10 years, that was what I started to get this afternoon. We have the next 10 years, and those have to be the low-hanging fruit that buy us time. If we don't get the low-hanging fruit right that buy us time, it's not going to make too much difference if we go the 10, 20, 30 years out. So I don't have answers to this, but I speak to myself with some sense of urgency that we're looking to do things that will help us, give us the best opportunity to get those right actions. And that's why we look at different, and we're creating as we go along. So I think you had up there that you will be talking with Peter, you'll talk with the director. And
Does that make sense?
No, it does.
Okay.
I'm happy to help or be on a committee, however you want to work it, but I think we should definitely
good.
talk and probably talk to Eric Eby too,
Sure.
the
And
transportation engineer.
I think if we're looking for 3 to 5 people, it could be people on climate solutions, this committee, or suggestions that you have of folks who aren't on the committees who might be interested. I've got some ideas, and just to start doing the spade work on this topic, to start generating some ideas that can then feed into wherever it's useful, and that's something you can help define, Peter.
So do you have like do you have measurements already to like evaluate where the value is like?
I think
like
that
this-
would have to be a big part of it, and it's it's mode shift. If you're giving up a car trip and replacing it with a bus trip, I think there are measurements of
Right. Well, I
emissions.
guess I was even thinking more basic. Is it residents or is it tourists?
Oh, I think it's all, but I think that's why I had the bullet about framing it, because it's very important to say what's in and what's out. I mean, probably what's out is I-95 driving through Portsmouth at 70 miles an hour. That's out. But is getting another trip into take C&J to Boston or the airport, working on that, is that in? How do you deal with the airport? How do you deal with Air Force? How do you deal with the port? I mean, all those are important, and you don't have to include everything unless there's some real purpose for doing it. You want to be able to make reductions. So there's no point in including something you can't have an effect on and boosting up your inventory just for the sake of it.
So quick question. I mean, one approach is a voluntary approach. Hopefully a family might get rid of one of their cars, or they might use the bus instead of driving. Another approach is, I don't know if Portsmouth has the ability to put in restrictions. Like, for example, all day long I see Amazon gray vans running around my neighborhood. And I remember years ago, UPS would come through a neighborhood once a day. Now, Amazon spends the entire, I live on off the North Mill Pond, they have a van or many vans in my neighborhood all day long. I mean, it's like not an hour that goes by that I don't see an Amazon van go by. This is rhetorical, but does Portsmouth have the ability to put in, some sort of restrictions that say, delivery services within Portsmouth city limits, must use electric vehicles? and really, take a strong approach to something like that. The hoping that people do the right thing.
Of course, those are limiting trips to the store.
Yeah. Well,
The counselor-
maybe
Go ahead.
not. It's because a lot of those products that Amazon delivers, you can't get at stores too, right? So,
Kate has her
Councilor
hand up.
Cook had
yeah.
a comment.
I wanted to expand on this conversation just a little bit because I think it's great to talk about, ways that we can reduce trips. But I think we also have to start from kind of like the very basic idea of expanding sidewalks so that more pedestrians can be walking in the city. It can be as simple as an action like making sure we have sidewalks in all of our neighborhoods, making sure we have expanded sidewalks, making sure we execute our Complete Streets program. So we already have things in place that can be kind of the beginning or lower level, I guess, of phasing in additional transportation options in the city. And I see this really as a phase in of, trying to increase options that don't pollute, but also trying to do things like limiting the number of trips, say, that somebody takes in the community, like a delivery van. So I think that this is just, we have to think really small too.
Small, and then ability to scale it. And the emissions reduction comes from the eliminated trip, but a safe walk to a bus that isn't yet currently running would be something that then eliminates a trip and reduces the traffic. So then you get into some of the co-benefits of the strategy. It's reducing the emissions as well.
And to get to your question about sorry, Rick, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to try and, I don't know if I can answer it. I think I would just say that I don't know that there's the ability to limit the amount of, a Amazon delivery van runs in your city unless there's some sort of state legislation that would allow for it. I don't know how we could do that, but it's something to think about.
You got to start someplace.
Yep.
A lot of cities have ordinances for truck deliveries at night,
Yeah.
not during the day. But then again, I think New Hampshire has some special considerations with state controls. I think with the Amazon, they're motivated by their own economy as well, and if they could save some money by combining trips, they'll do that as well. But it's certainly worth exploring, and it's constant. I mean,
Yeah.
especially with the pandemic.
Yeah.
Well, and I think to get to Councilor Cook's point, maybe we encourage people to not use Amazon as much and go to their local shops. Or I think in Vermont, they're starting a Amazon for the state. So they sell manufactured goods in Vermont and they deliver them. So they're trying to build that local economy. So that maybe that's an action in the climate action plan to try to encourage that. But I think that gets at what you're saying. If we can get people to try to buy things locally.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say one more thing too. Living here in Portsmouth, we have a lot of restaurants. We have a lot of bars. And the enormous trucks that come through here constantly to restock. Those are big diesel trucks. And, is there some way that we can encourage some of these companies to move towards electric vehicles?
I hear diesel, I think of the Pease Cargo, which luckily didn't happen. But some form of it, I think, will. I think we should keep our eye on the Pease area.
Have you seen the new proposal?
I heard about it. I've been cautiously, kind of anxiously avoiding it. That's one thing that comes to mind. I'm thinking of before I had my license, I was the only kid on the Portsmouth High School bus to Greenland every day. One kid. That's a big, stinking, carcinogenic diesel bus.
Yeah.
I am kind of a fringe case because I live 10, 11 miles away from the high school. But for somebody who lives on Wybird Street, give them an electric scooter. I'm thinking. I mean, we have this data, or we will have this data from the greenhouse gas inventory, correct? So this comes to mind as municipality can start getting creative. Like an electric scooter. What kid wouldn't want an electric scooter to get to and from school on the sidewalk that maybe we're already considering beefing up or adding to a neighborhood that doesn't have
for a safe, separate bike path. Oops, wait a minute.
Maybe nobody's thought of that.
As far as municipal, like legislation maybe, I've been to cities, particularly in Florida, where they're like a tourist area. And one of the things that's all over the place is electric golf carts that tourists, rent for a week, and they use that to drive around and go to restaurants and go to the beach and whatever. And you never see those here. So I don't know if that's something that has to specifically be legislated, that, these vehicles are allowed on city streets, not highways, whatever. Because we are also a tourist economy here. Tons of people come here, stay in hotels. And in addition, we have a lot of seasonal residents that are only here part of the year. That's our whole condo economy, or a lot of it is people that are buying a condo, they're here for 6 months and then they go somewhere else for the rest of the year. And that seems like it could be a great low carbon solution for just small in-town trips, easy electric vehicles, but I don't know if it needs to be legislated somehow to make them legal. Or why wouldn't we see at least some people doing it now and then or something?
I want a protective steel cage around mine.
The other thing is the sort of circulator shuttle bus could be electric vehicle. It could also be something that is marketed by the hotels and contributed to by the hotel, so people could come. Like when I visited Savannah, I had no car and got along just fine by walking and using the circulator bus. I mean, there's a great opportunity to have developers, private sector contribute to that as part of not having to build all the parking.
It's a bit more equitable. I mean, all these specialized things that you're talking about, it's really, it's not, it doesn't include a sector of society.
I think you can get it to serve all sectors by getting the contributions from the private sector, and the circulator bus could then circulate to the affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
What I'd like to do is move on to the next topic, right with everyone. Portsmouth Green Buildings. Who added that to the agenda? All right.
Technically, Peter added it to the agenda.
That Corey's
I had
request.
just emailed you the presentation. I don't know if you.
Did you just now, or was it just now?
Like a couple minutes. Well,
Okay.
30 minutes.
You don't have it on a
now.
You don't have it on a thumb drive, do you? Or could you put it on one? 'Cause
If you have
Yeah.
3 USB
Regular old?
updated one, I don't think it's a regular old.
It's not
Let
a
me see.
regular one.
I got a new computer and it's the bane of my existence.
Oh, it doesn't fit a regular thumb drive.
No, it's
that's
yeah, it's
funny.
incredibly annoying.
Let me get my email out. I can do it.
While
Let's skip to another one.
So while you're getting email up, I'm also going to about the community power update from the June 29th event. I'm pretty sure that was the 3S Art Space event.
Yeah.
And who could actually speak fluently about community power? Because that was a very detailed and well attended event. Is anyone here not familiar with community power, what the general concept is?
I attended. It was a great event.
Yeah.
There was a lot going by though.
I was going to say that just last week, I got the email from Portsmouth Smart Growth saying that the video of the event is now on their website.
All right.
So that will help those of us who didn't get it all the first time, a second chance to get some of the information.
I walked away with a question, and I'd like to ask this the committee here. So if I understand community power, the cities that are signing on as a launch community power have the ability to generate their own power. So for example, Portsmouth could put in a solar farm, right? Is that?
We could, but that's not the
It's not.
concept. So the concept essentially is for people to be able to, for ratepayers in the city, they'll be with their bill, there'll be an option to stay with their current source of electricity, or If they do nothing, then their source of electricity would be from a renewable source. It
Yeah,
doesn't
I-
necessarily mean it's going to be a local.
Totally get it.
That's where we end.
Yeah, totally get it. Totally understand the whole that whole model. But the question is, why would Portsmouth not start generating its own power, like building a solar farm or putting up some wind turbines, in addition to?
Which
They can,
we can.
they can.
And if that's something,
We should let Kate,
yeah, please.
Yeah, so I sit on that committee, and I have to say, I've only been on the committee for 6 months, so I share what I understand. Not only could we install solar arrays and start that process of doing local generation, we've talked about that as actually being one of our goals in joining community power, because what we're doing right now is the committee is fleshing out the goals that we have as a community in joining the coalition. So that is one of the goals that the committee has endorsed so far. So I don't know what the end result will be of our draft of our goals, but that's something that we're serious about. But that's just one piece of the puzzle, because ultimately with community power, our goal would be to buy sustainable energy. So, and when we finally join the coalition, assuming everything goes through, it would be the default provider for our residents. So I think that that's really the critical piece of this is 85% of people don't choose a power supplier in the state. So we're looking at 85% of people using the default, which would be community power in this case. And we have chosen to make sure we have a sustainable option. So the goal would be to be more sustainable than what is offered now through our default supplier, which is Eversource. And currently, I think their sustainability rate is somewhere around 25-26% of the power they generate is sustainable. That's through the PUC definition. So we would aim to be higher than that and to, if not a lot more sustainable, phase in more and more sustainable energy over time until we get to 100% sustainable power. So it essentially is a way to shift to greener practices, but at the same time be able to limit costs because of the way in which we would buy power, which is differently than the way that our default supplier currently, Eversource, does. So.
All right. Yeah, thank you. If Portsmouth was not considering generating power, I would be concerned.
I have a fun segue for the next subject. One of my favorite headlines of something I proposed, I made the cover of the Herald, something like Denton proposes wind turbines on City Hall, which just as an example, because I want to push for a large scale renewable energy source. It's very windy, you can do a small wind turbine, but the Herald definitely ran with that. So on that subject, let's talk about sustainable buildings.
Yeah. So on the other side of the civil engineering coin, which I very much enjoyed that, I'm a structural engineer by practice, but education in civil. So I had a choice to go the transportation route. The curves of roads are very complex. So yeah, this Tori Brooks, for those who don't know me, I work as a structural engineer and a sustainability consultant at an A&E firm. So I spend most of my day talking about this and doing this. This kind of came about from some of my work with the CAP RFP committee and the greenhouse gas inventory and questions I kept getting from people because of what I do, and I thought that it would be really relevant, especially with some of the information that's coming out of those. So yeah, this is mostly, it's very similar to what kind of Bill was doing, which is it's part informational, it's part brainstorming, and it's part seeing how we can get things kind of more, if there's anyone interested in being involved, and maybe like a little bit of a focus group on this side of the coin. Go to the next one. So this should look familiar. This is this committee's webpage, and at the very bottom it says buildings. I'm gonna not be offended by the fact that it's the last bullet point. But this is something that's, you know, it's part of every conversation you have about sustainability. It's part of every CAP. It's part of every greenhouse gas inventory. Buildings are very, very relevant in the conversation about sustainability. Also, we're almost always sitting in one when we talk about this. You can go to the next one. Fun fact. So I always like to start with definitions because people often don't know what a green building means, and it is not their fault because it is used loosely. So World Green Building Council has a definition. I think they have the right to make definitions given what they are. And their definition is pretty, I would say, optimistic. Eliminates negative impacts and can create positive impacts. That is ideal, that we would be doing better than nothing with buildings. I think it will take us a while to get quite to that definition. I really like looking at the kind of features list, you know, what are these things that we're talking about, what's actually being implemented. And the reason efficient use or efficiency is bolded and underlined is because almost everything can kind of come back to that. It is an efficient use of resources for the purpose we need, which is buildings to live and work and play in. You know, and that's through renewables and waste reduction and air quality and materials and all of these different things, but it really just comes back to efficiency. And then at the very bottom of the slide, that's kind of how I refer to when I talk about green building, when I talk about sustainable building, that's how I define it. It's pretty broad, and it's buildings that implement strategies to meaningfully reduce environmental impact. I don't quite say all positive impacts because inherently by putting large structures on the earth, it's not usually positive. So I think right now where we are, especially in our society, is we need to reduce the environmental impact of just that act to start. It is, you know, it needs to happen. We need somewhere to live, but we can make it a little bit less impactful. Next slide. So one of the other things that always comes up with buildings is what's with all the rating systems and what does it mean and which ones are green and which ones aren't green and which ones should I do for my building. So, which is completely valid because there are a heck of a lot. This is just a list of some rating systems in the US on that middle picture. I like this graphic because it kind of shows that these are all valid options. These all fit into that definition I have at the bottom of the slide. Their whole purpose is to implement strategies, meaningful reductions. It's just which strategies and what meaningful reductions mean are slightly different in each one. They each have strengths depending on what you're looking at with residential and commercial and municipality. So they all fit into this picture. And at the very bottom, I think it's also important to note that like code, our building codes are a big part of this. Every time we adopt a new code, there is a energy and sustainability component of that. So even without these rating systems, this is not a foreign thing. This is something that is happening within our building codes. And the picture on the left, I like to show because there is a lot of greenwashing that happens in all sustainability efforts, but especially in buildings. And the rating systems are a really great way to cut through some of that. Because having a lot of plants on your building does not mean it is necessarily sustainable.
But it may be green.
I don't know if that building ever got built. That is a rendering. But you see a lot of things like that. And it can be harmful because I think when people then look at numbers and stuff, they don't understand. They say, that was a really big, expensive building and it didn't cut emissions that much. And I'm like, well, yeah, because it's all concrete and they just put some trees on it. Of course it didn't. So that's where the rating systems are really helpful because it's an easy way for, you know, builders and clients and people to understand what things mean. And on the picture on the very right is what I like to show as, you know, that's just one of the rating systems. That's Energy Star. And the big takeaway of all of them is that you're increasing efficiency and you're lowering energy use and environmental impact. every rating system is just a different game on at what scale, at what cost, and how much. But that is the end goal on all of these. And even if you weren't to do a rating system, but you were still attempting to do a green sustainable building, that is still what you're trying to achieve. So, you know, you can get into the grit with the rating systems, but the concept is that it's trying to do better. Next one. Another thing with green buildings that is often brought up is that it's not just a new buildings thing. A building does not have to be brand new and covered in all the nicest facade materials to be a green building. Most of the buildings that we have today, we are going to have in 50, 60 years. Buildings are not quick to change over. It is not like buying a new bike. And so we need to look at it both ways. We need to look at it, you know, for any new construction that's going to happen, but we also need to look at it in the buildings that we currently have today, because they are a huge part of our greenhouse gas emissions, and we can lower that. The picture in the middle is an example of, you know, many houses that we have here in this city. And I would say that, you know, all of those things that are happening and those upgrades that are being made to that house are falling into that definition of what I would call a sustainable green building. It's implementing strategies, reducing environmental impact. That is a green building, even if it's wasn't when it maybe was built. It can be now. And then on the very right, that's actually from the Energy Star website. A lot of these rating systems have these components for existing buildings. It's not like these rating systems are only for new buildings. Many of them, you can get buildings rated. You can make these upgrades. You can get your fancy plaques, even if the building's not brand new, because they recognize that a lot of projects, especially in areas like ours, are remodels, renovations, major improvements. We don't have a ton of space to be building brand new buildings, so that is what we do a lot of times. You can move to the next one. Triple bottom line, it is what we talk about all the time in sustainability. It is very relevant to green building. I don't think I need to go over this with anybody in this room. I think they have a pretty good idea of what that means. So planet. So this top graphic, which is very hard to see right now, but that is coming from our 2018 greenhouse gas emissions in Portsmouth report. So we will have updated numbers soon, hopefully. The blue and the yellow on that, the blue is electric energy used in buildings and the emissions that are associated with that. This is all buildings. This is community, municipality, commercial. And the yellow is fossil fuel energy used in buildings. The gray is transportation, and the teeny sliver of blue is water, wastewater, and waste. I think that this graphic says a lot about where our leaky places are, and they are in our buildings. And, you know, 64% of the Portsmouth greenhouse gas emissions in the 2018 report was related to building energy use. So heating, cooling, and all the things we use energy for in buildings. So this is going to be a huge component of the cap that we have down the road. This is going to be obviously a huge component of every inventory we have. It's relatively easy to track because we all pay utility bills. So it is a very cut and dry, how much are you using type of thing. And I think one thing that I really like to talk about with green building is that the supply side of things with renewable energy is trendy, and it's awesome and it's important because that's the energy we're using. But looking at how we reduce the actual demand is in my biased opinion, just as, if not more important, because we don't have to make as much if we use less. And that is a great way to go about sustainability in general. And I love that diagram of kind of the triangle, and this, you know, buildings and envelopes are the base of that pyramid. We, you know, if we're talking about sustainability overall, it's usually in this reduction of impact, and that starts at the source.
That's a great slide.
Thank you. I'm happy to share all of this too. I'll send it to everyone. Nice one. Profit. So this is a very important slide in keeping me employed. We are now at a place where green buildings have been around long enough and are a prevalent enough part of the industry that we have a lot of numbers to tell us the things that 10, 15 years ago were this should work, and now it is this does work. The return on investment for buildings, the long-term cost savings for utilities in a building's lifespan, if you build with sustainable practices, almost always come out in the wash. In usually timeframes, you're looking like 5-10 years. And when you're looking at a building that's going to be 60, 100-year building, that is, serious savings. That graph on the bottom left, I really like. This is kind of a graph that's looking at the lowest hanging fruit in industries on greenhouse gas emissions. And that first one is buildings. We know how to make more efficient buildings. We have the ability and technology to do it. It's a rather cut and dry process. It's just not as fun and attractive. And I think that that's the hardest part of it. But there's so much low hanging fruit on every single person's house, every office, every store, every building you're in. There is something that can be done that's not that hard, that can make a significant difference.
Quick question. Do you think the national building codes, are they doing enough to help? I mean, because this is what you're showing here is so compelling. And I'm thinking, if people don't get this, and I don't know how you could not get this if you were building or owning buildings, through the codes, we're kind of helping people not shoot themselves in the foot, right? And doing the right thing for themselves and for the environment all at the same time.
It's getting there. One of the biggest things is that codes when it comes to buildings are painfully slow, like worse than watching concrete dry slow. And I can say that because I watch concrete dry on a daily basis. So to give you a perspective, the IBC is kind of the International Building Code, is the big guy, tells you where to go for all the other little codes. In New Hampshire, July 1st, we accepted the adoption of the 2018 IBC.
Wow.
Yes. And that was with pushing from industry. I'm on the Structural Engineers Board in New Hampshire, and we were like, can we please do this? This is ridiculous. So we were on the 2015. Technically, we are still on the 2015 for another 6 months.
Wow.
So that means that we currently are 2 code iterations behind. So yes, changes are being made in the building code. It just takes a really long time for those changes. So it's being driven by voluntary because of ROI and profit is really what it comes down to. And the building codes also can be a little difficult because they need to, International Building Code needs to apply to the entire world. And then even within our, the US especially, with how many climate zones we have, they do recommendations and the building codes are by climate zone, but even that can be very different. A climate zone where we are we can be in the same climate zone as somewhere over on the Pacific Northwest, but that doesn't mean that our buildings look the same and have the same needs and impacts. So it's a really great step.
Okay.
It's just not really fast enough. It's
All right.
kind of what it comes down to.
Thank you. Thank you.
And additionally, I'll add, because I also work in this sector, is that even, if we adopted the current, most newest IBC, that is still way behind like some of the like Passive House and stuff that she was showing on the slide for like the cutting edge technology.
Yeah, it
Like
probably
if you build
would.
a Passive House building, it's going to save 75% energy over what the current building code is.
I think right now, if you did a 2020, and this is, very dependent on each one, but I don't think a 2021 IBC energy code would get you even close to LEED certified.
2021?
The
Did you
most,
say?
if you did the most recent energy code, I don't think that building would get you anywhere near LEED certified.
Just
Wow.
LEED, regular, not even.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
isn't even a super high standard.
No, just baseline, just
Yeah.
get a plaque of any kind.
Wow.
It's not getting you there.
Can I ask a quick question? I can't see the slides, unfortunately, so please send them to me.
It says
But
it's
also, I
showing.
was hoping maybe we could set up a time to sit down because because
Let me
of
try it again.
a push
It says
by
it's sharing.
Effie Malley, who's sitting there, and Allison Tanner. I've already been kind of working on this a little bit with the city manager, and I'm supposed to meet with our chief building inspector to talk about where the low-hanging fruit is, at least, so we can start in the existing building code and see what we can do for now.
Yeah.
But it would be great if I had your expertise,
Oh,
essentially.
Yeah, and that kind of comes to what I'm getting to at the end. So it sounds like that is a
So we-
perfect plug. That was perfect. Is that planned? You know that I should have had you on all of my presentations.
I'm sorry,
So-
Kate, maybe we can point at the screen, but no, we can't, 'cause the
Allison Tanner
camera's
from
over
the
here.
Conservation Commission is on the Portsmouth Climate Solutions with me, and we were talking about zoning and how that's something we could get going with the city. So we met with Peter, Kate, and Beverly Zant, the planning director,
Oh, great.
one other person, and talked about and heard about what was happening. Oh, Beth Moreau was there,
Yeah.
and Kate Cook and Kate Homet both. So we had a lot of follow-up, but the low-hanging fruit, Kate, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was gonna say the same thing to Tori, that it would be great for us to meet.
Yeah, I would love to do that. And then, so I think, I mean, other than, so on the very bottom right, that's an example of like a private developer and just the benefits that they're going to get from building green. There's so many studies right now, and there's a reason that a lot of the commercial private sector is going this way, and it's not all out of the goodness of their hearts. I'm just going to leave it at that. You can go to the next slide.
I hope I can.
Oh, maybe not.
I'm having trouble with the screen. This is like frozen on us. Let me see.
Oh, that's weird.
It's really weird. I don't know what it's doing, but I'd like to say it's not my fault, but. There we go.
There we go. I think a huge strength of green building is that everyone lives in houses, and it applies to everyone. And that, especially right now, a lot of the challenges we're facing, and fears that we have in our lives, are hugely relevant to energy and the buildings that we live in. 27% of U.S. households report that they're having challenges paying energy bills. We've been watching the volatility in different utility prices. Especially in our climate, our houses not being able to be properly heated or cooled is a serious issue. It's a health risk. It is a community safety concern. And this is day to day, but also in any type of environmental emergency. Having houses that are efficient and can stay at temperature drastically decreases municipality and emergency response needs. It's important to note this disproportionately affects people with lower income, minorities, and any community at risk. It's huge, and the proportion of your income that you're spending on energy consumption is not proportionate to that income. It just cuts into everything else. That graph at the top is showing the second year there is, I think, is it 2021 or 2022? But essentially it's showing that more people are spending more of their income on energy bills. And, that's the relevant side for everybody. Everyone feels that, everyone sees that. And there's also a lot of the stuff that, isn't numbers. It isn't a bill that comes in the mail, but there's a huge conversation about better buildings and the health of our buildings and the health of ourselves in these buildings. We spend like 90% of our time indoors. And I mean, in a lot of buildings, we're not breathing in maybe the best air, and occupant health and indoor air quality are huge concerns. And those are huge attributes of this effort in green and sustainable building. And though they're a little bit harder to quantify, it does not mean that they're not very relevant. And also, this comes to, you know, that like commercial profit side too, is people want to be in buildings that they like. You want to spend time in spaces that make you feel good, and that you have natural light, and that you're thermally comfortable and not, you know, fighting with your coworker about how that the temperature of the AC is and all of these things. And that is a big part of green building, is this experience that we're all having. So this is my call to action, is some type of either subcommittee, task group, whatever your working group, whatever we might call it. These, you know, my biggest thing is it needs to have stakeholders from all different sides, buildings, you know, residents and the city officials are a huge part of that. The business owners and down to builders, the people who are, you know, going to make it happen in the end. It really needs to be kind of all of these people. And I think that, you know, focusing on that low-hanging fruit, incentive-based, high return on investment actions on all fronts is the best way to go, and there's plenty of it to go around. And then working with a lot of, I mean, so many of these other subcommittees or committees are really relevant to this. Obviously, the energy and greenhouse gas inventory and transportation and the co-benefits we're talking about, they're all super relevant to green buildings. I know that Peter had also brought up, you know, municipalities, a great way to start. Even though it's a very small percentage of our greenhouse gas emissions of the buildings, it's a great way to showcase kind of what these can be. We've already done that in a lot of our buildings. You know, the library is a great success story with that. The solar panels on the high school and on the water treatment, like these are all great examples of that, but making it so that we have kind of a standard for what that looks like for municipalities, I think would be a great way to start. And then to, you know, get a feel public survey of, you know, we all have an idea of where kind of these fears and needs are, but really asking people, you know, like in what form is this help the best, in the sense of whether that's, you know, retrofits or what is going to be the most receivable. There are a lot of buildings, so figuring out the most effective way to get at the most of them is the biggest, and you need to go to the owners or the inhabitants to make that happen. So it's a very public-based approach. And then, yeah, I mean, task 3 is really my dream, which is to figure out some actual programs that can be adopted into the city to help residents and simultaneously help our journey on reducing our environmental impact, which in green buildings go incredibly hand in hand, which is great because everyone likes lower utility bills. So yeah, and then the next slide is just a beginning of many brainstorms to come. Some of this is stuff that's already been, you know, happening in other communities. Some of this is, I don't think any of this on here is particularly new, but these are all things that are happening, could happen in Portsmouth, could have a positive impact. And I'd also like to say that these are all pretty incentive based. And I think that that's really important with this. Eventually, yes, we will get to like code restrictions and being able to, you know, talks of carbon tax and all of these things down the road, but I think we have so much room to grow in just pure incentives and benefits to start, that I think it's a great way to do it. So yeah, if anyone is interested, it sounds like with Kate and Effie and the things that are already moving, we're more than halfway there.
It was interesting because in the meeting, we heard about what the city council had been working on with the planning department led by Beth Moreau's work. developing ADU standards. And ADUs fits with a lot of what we're talking about. So how can we get those quicker and less expensively? How do we expedite ADUs? But then the next phase, phase 3, the city's gonna be hiring Rick Tainter, and he's looking at incentives. So we talked about things like green roofs and renewable energy, and it would be great to work with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what is important is that weatherization part. We are a city of many old buildings that leak horribly of energy. I mean, we've all felt it, and there are many ways to help people help themselves with that have almost all positives, and the return on investment is so low. I mean, I am a homeowner, and even I constantly am like, I'll do a project, I'm like, God, why did I not do that 6 months ago? Because I immediately see the impacts, you know, and sometimes it just takes the information and the knowing and the stuff we were talking about. Oh, my neighbor did that, and like, worked great for them.
The other thing that came up when we met was we talked a lot about trees and tree ordinances and looking at those as related. I mean, it's not specifically building, but about building buildings, what happens to trees, and we see it all over Portsmouth.
Yeah. Yeah, and all of this, if you look into any of those rating systems too, the rating systems are a great way to go because they are such a concrete thing, and it is something to hang your hat on and say, you know, put a plaque on the door and you've met all these standards, and I do think that that's a good thing. But I really like to look at the broad picture of what they're asking for, and it's not singular. You are looking at energy, you are looking at sites, you know, like, is this an already developed site that you are repurposing essentially versus is this a beautiful field of wildflowers that we're going to put a giant building on? Like that, those have different, and it's constant decision making. So yeah, I think creating a framework that works for us specifically in Portsmouth would be huge because it's daunting and it's very broad.
But what we were talking about when we met was there are other cities that have put together model codes, and there are model codes available for us to look
Oh, a
at.
ton.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And in our climate zone, I mean, not very far. There's a lot to be done.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
We only have we have less than 15 minutes left. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment or ask questions, or if we should move on to the organic land care update regarding the Conservation Commission.
Yeah. Jess, do you want to give that, or do you want me to?
No, I can get that. So that some members of the Conservation Commission have started a subcommittee sort of along the lines of what Bill and Tori are talking about in creating community action and awareness and education around organic land care management efforts. And the organization that we are basing a lot of our efforts and education is NOFA, the Northeast Organic Farmers Association, and their standards. And so at this point, the committee has sort of dovetailed off into two smaller groups, and they are kind of getting themselves together and organizing. One is going to be focused on community outreach and education, specifically to residents, how they can care for their lawns themselves, or what to look for in landscapers when they hire somebody to know if they're actually practicing these things or if it's just greenwashing. And then also reaching out to businesses and trying to get them to consider more organic, natural ways to take care of their land. And the other sort of subcommittee is one that is going to be looking at city ordinances and seeing if we can actually do something to maybe make it on the Conservation Commission. We've been requesting that people consider this when they come before us for a conditional use permit as part of their efforts moving forward, but we want to see if that we can just create it as a city practice instead of just, would you consider doing this kind of thing. And so that's where we are at right now. Did I miss a beat?
No, I think that's just right on.
Does organic lawn care include like using gas-powered tools for the lawn, like lawn mowers and
That's a good
Tremendous
question.
process.
I think my understanding, and it's been a little while since I looked through the updates, and maybe Peter can speak to it better. It's more about, the things that you're actually using on your lawn and those type of products and that kind of stuff. But that would be definitely an interesting thing to consider as a piece of the puzzle for sure.
All right.
Yeah, I'd like one.
I love it.
As far as other business goes, does anyone have any other issues, or should we move on to the parting words?
I have one really
Yes.
quick thing. When I met with Concord, Massachusetts, I was very impressed with work done by Mothers Out Front, which is a national organization mobilizing to protect children in terms of climate change, but also racial and social justice issues. Like one of their big issues is electric school buses. But when I was in Concord, Mass, they said, oh, the woman that runs our outreach comes from Portsmouth, but they couldn't remember her name. So now it's months later, and I figured out it was a woman I already know, and you may know her too, Janet Grote. And I met with her. There's a branch of Mothers Out Front in the western part of the state, but there's none here. And I just wanted to mention it in case people know mothers, they're mostly young mothers, that are interested in doing something about climate change. If anyone wanted to start one of these, it would be great because Janet's right over on Wybird Street, and she's dynamic, and they have toolkits and training and developing leadership. And it's really about what we're talking about, community engagement. So we'll be looking at them again. I just wanted people to know about that.
So for those who do not know, we usually end the meeting with what everyone's taking away. I'll start, and I think I've said this every meeting since I've been back on the committee. It's a night and day difference from the 4 years I was previously the council's rep on the committee, where a lot of these ideas were just discussed here. It didn't feel like they were being discussed anywhere else in the city. And to some of these specific things from green buildings, like their initiatives that I was pushing. Peter, I don't know if you remember when I pushed try to incentivize LEED buildings, like these concepts that were just above some people's heads sitting here. Now it's just completely, not that it was above your head. You totally knew what I was talking about. But point being, like, it's just a complete sea change from where things were just 2 years ago to today. So thank you everyone for either staying involved or getting involved.
Busy night tonight. I have lots of takeaways. One, I'm really glad to hear the progress on the cap, that we're getting so close to getting an RFP out. Getting excited about the electrical vehicle show. I think that's a cool idea.
The retrofit show.
Retrofit, yeah, exactly. But probably most excited is I really want to join your committee because this is a big focus of mine. So I'm glad you brought that up. Great presentation, and happy to be part of it.
The great thing about this committee is that I missed last month, and in the 2 months that I haven't been here, a lot has happened that I haven't even really been paying attention to. I think every time I come to one of these meetings, I'm struck by how quickly things seem to move. I have this image of red tape, and that'll be 3 years, that'll be 10 years, and things are happening every time. Every time we meet and every time we talk, and I hear this subcommittee has been meeting 3 times, and this one's been meeting 2 times, and I'm just always struck by even if I just sit here and take up space, I feel like I'm learning so much, and it's a good dynamic group to be a part of. So I'm always excited hearing what's going on, and hearing the EV retrofit show that's coming up, and all the developments in the city and all the dynamic things that happen. So I think the sea change is taking place.
Yeah, I'm most excited about Tori's presentation and working with Aubrey. I mean, Kate knows I was struggling a bit with this. It's outside of my canon. I looked at the land use regulations, and it's 333 pages or something, and I'm poring over it and looking at Cambridge and other cities and trying to put it together for Portsmouth. And it's really hard to figure out what the low-hanging fruit is. But people with this expertise, I really look forward to working with you.
It was a lot. I think I really think it's cool to see how naturally I feel like we're branching in a way that will then all come together in the CAP in hopefully a year. Like these are all like when we were talking about the RFP for the CAP and making sure that we just mentioned the big topics that we needed to make sure that they had in the plan. I think every single one of those was mentioned tonight at some point, meaning there was already movement on that. And, you know, like Bill said, that means that that's more that consultant can use of momentum that's already happening. And so it's really cool to see. I'm also very excited for the EV show because I'm going to be in the market at some point once I get my panels on, which is taking a while.
I think I am grateful for the expertise. It's so nice to have Bill here and Tori here and just all these people who are so knowledgeable about so many different pieces of the puzzle, and also people who are just willing to commit time and effort and energy into them. I know Effie did an extraordinary amount for the CAP, and now she seems like she's very committed to the building piece of things. And personally, I just feel torn because I want to volunteer for everything so that I can learn, but in practicality sense, that's not possible. So, yeah, that's my takeaway is where do I send my next efforts now?
Well, thank you for having me today, and I thought the Green Buildings presentation was stunningly awesome, and could be given right now as is to many places, which would have an amazing appeal to the Portsmouth community. So I think you should think about that. Yeah.
Take it on the road.
What's that?
Take the show on the road.
Take the show on the road at least. I mean, yeah. I think you have really a lot of interested participants. So, because it's very well done. So that's all I wanted to say.
I enjoyed joining the meeting. I think particularly I'm looking for a useful fit for transport, and I think hearing Tori's presentation I think was very good because I think a lot of the structure is useful to adapt, and I was thinking from your presentation that it's relevant but not limited to the CAP. I mean, it's really sustainable buildings, and I think what I'm talking about is sustainable transport as well, and a lot of the same aspects, the supply and the demand and the incentives are the same. I think if you add the buildings and the transport sector, it's the whole thing. So I mean, it's a piece of cake.
You guys got to take
Let's
care of it.
just go ahead. Just go ahead and fix the buildings and get a bunch of buses, and we'll be all set. I mean, that's easy to go, but it's I think a lot of food for thought, and I think I'm looking forward to following up with Peter a bit to get ideas about the focus. I mean, it could be a sustainable transport focus as well, but I think I'm particularly focused on the CAP because I think the CAP is what's really on the table now, and a lot of these ideas have been floating around forever and just not happening. But I think adding a community commitment, a city council commitment to the CAP and to carbon reduction is a very useful, important thing. I mean, it's with transportation, it's all co-benefits as well. Everything that you do serves multiple goals, and greenhouse gas reduction is a compelling initial one. Maybe it's a tipping point.
Wow. So I still feel pretty new to this place in regards to everything that's going on, all the different subgroups and working groups, but I mean, I think it's really amazing that 2 months in, 2 months into my job, I'm still hearing about all these different efforts being thrown into the CAP and how much momentum has happened, how much is coming together in just the last year. And with all the different ideas tonight, everything ties in so well with the climate action plan. We already have community support happening. We've had these groups forever, and it's really getting the ball rolling. And I think it's gonna be really impactful when we finally get the consultant on board, going out into the community and having all of us help them reach out and talk to people and do all these other awesome projects that we have ideas for, and bringing up maybe potential goals for short-term and long-term stuff. So I think it's very inspiring stuff. So yeah.
Month number 2 for me as a new committee member. I love the enthusiasm of all the members. It's been contagious for me, and I'm looking forward to jumping in on some of the subcommittees and adding some value. Thank you.
Well, I've been doing this for a while with Bert here, and what I was inspired by tonight, or was not surprised, but it's great to see 3 different subcommittees. You know, sometimes we'll go months and nobody will talk about doing anything outside of the meeting, and that's how it went for years. You go to the meeting, we talk about things, and then you come back the next month to the meeting. Well, we have a meeting. We've been doing this already for a while, but now 3 subcommittees formed essentially, or want to form. It's perfect timing for the CAP in terms of needing that community engagement, needing that involvement. Hopefully those subcommittees are willing to pull other people into their efforts, because that's really how things are going to grow and expand. It's not just membership from this committee, but membership from people, experts in the field, but also people with enthusiasm out in the community who want to do things too. And I think we need to keep that momentum going and really ramp it up when we get the contractor on board to help us. So I like what's happening. Kate.
My takeaway is how lucky are we as a group? I'm sitting here tonight, I'm listening. The expertise in this room is unbelievable. We're incredibly fortunate in Portsmouth to have so many people who have an expertise that, not everyone can say that they have as a community. And I'm so happy that people are willing to volunteer their time and offer their assistance in this process, because I don't have the expertise. I'm learning, I'm listening. I'm happy to facilitate as much as possible where I can, but I feel like we definitely need to utilize all just the knowledge that we have in this room and outside of this room, because we're going to get a lot further by doing that. So thank you all.
Looking at the screen, Kate, and seeing you and seeing us and seeing the table, this is a metaphor for how quickly things have changed. We are in a new world, moving quicker with new technology. This committee has for years, I think, been a placeholder to kind of see where the big picture was. That's where I think, Peter, you were saying, starting from an eco-municipality to natural step. And what I'm taking away is pretty moving, actually. The power of our working together and doing what we're doing. And I heard the word inspiration, and I take that seriously. There is so much eco-anxiety around the world that if we can empower each other to do those things which we can, that is what I think creates the positive energy for my daily living. And I'm going to suggest that in next month's agenda, that we have a review, obviously, if anybody wants to bring back what they had, and that we put on the agenda some small segment of time to look at how we can bring what is an emerging pattern. A CAP is a umbrella, it's a system, it's a container. And I'm looking, what is the container that we might have that can have all the subcommittees? I don't know what this is, but what's emerging. We had a sustainability fair when 1,200 people came through to see what were the current compost bins and the current thing. I'm looking at what is the possibility of having a slideshow truly moving, Tori. I've been looking at buildings for years, and from living buildings, you know, and there's ideals, but now it's commercially driven. And how can we get that information on transportation and all these subgroups? I don't know what it is, but it's emerging. Maybe there's something we can empower others to get the information and move. And I don't know what it is, but I think it's worth a discussion. What's a green council or a fair, something? So was that, is there a word for that? Do you know what I'm talking
Green
about?
council?
Yeah, I'm thinking how do we take all these little things together and build it in so that we, maybe the cap is it. Maybe in the cap is what we do, and I'll bring up the Portsmouth Climate Solutions. How do we actually communicate this activity to others? Anyway, I said a lot.
Thank you, everyone. Motion to adjourn. All right.
And I think our next meeting is August 25th.
That sounds correct.
And then,
There's going to be
Kate
another
would
meeting in
be-
August after that.
Kate would be the facilitator, and who's the?
Who's next on the list? So if you don't know, we do. The person who, I took notes last time, so I facilitated this time. Kate took notes this time, she's facilitating next time. I think it's just an alphabetical list we have going by. Is her last name Cook or?
It's on there's a Google Calendar, Google page. Bird has it.
Kate, Steve, who is not here.
That's right, Effie, August 25th.
Steve will facilitate Kate, August 25th, Kate facilitates, Steve takes notes. Kate.
Okay.
Steve.
You know Steve White?
I sent you an email. I know you get a ton of stuff. I'm interested.
Did I didn't get back to you?
Yeah, it's fine. I'm interested in putting just a small vertical access windmill.
Yeah, I remember. I think
Is that like talk to the building department to see